Hello and welcome to Birth of a New Dimension. On this week's episode, I will speak about the occupiers of the interstices. And I speak about this so much because the intention is for this information to be empowering to you so that you know the format or the layout of reality and so that you can more effectively maneuver through that reality. Brief pause. So what do I mean by the interstices? This is the membrane between worlds. And first of all, I'm just going to do a brief plug about my upcoming webinar. This is going to be done through Facebook, but on Zoom video conferencing. It is part of the Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans online class that I do. The Level 1 information I recorded 3 years ago, and it was my best understanding of the origins of how consciousness affected the organisms that already lived on Earth, why we have to ascend, why we are in the process of raising our vibration. You know, the level 1 material is basically my understanding at that time about the trajectory of our consciousness and what we were facing. And I didn't yet have all of the characters, didn't yet understand everyone and everything that was at play in this large experience. Last year, I got greater insight when I connected telepathically to technology itself. So first of all, I'm going to begin this broadcast by saying very clearly that I am not a part of the transhumanist agenda. I am a galactic walk-in. I'm an abstraction that has come into this human female physical vehicle, and I changed the genetic format of this vehicle in order to accommodate my presence here. I do not use technology to do what I do. The Flying Rainbow Lasagna is an invention that I created. It's a shape. It's a shape and it's a concept and it is a movement of energy. And it is what you can do, what each one of us can do with not only our genes, but also with our non-physical energy presence. This is the body that you have that is made of pure time. So let me also say, recently, I've been exposed online to a couple of conversations where people are very anti-chakra. They are against the idea of the chakras. They feel that it is somehow a system of mental control and that this is designed to oppress humanity further. Nothing could be further from the truth. Ha ha ha. I drop my pinky, I drop my opera glasses as I laugh and clutch my pearls. No, it's ridiculous to say that. It's like saying if I were to give you information about numbers and help you to be numerically literate, like to be able to add and subtract and multiply. That is not oppressing you with the system of numbers. Even though it's true that you had a different form of consciousness that was more numinous or more oceanic or more connected to that which is abstract before I gave you the systemic understanding of what numbers are. Numbers can be very freeing. It's a tool with which you can measure and utilize and perceive reality. Of course, it's not the only tool, and it's not the end of the journey. And when you look at the world and you say, well, other people are using this tool. Other people are using the tool of numbers and addition and subtraction, and they're using it to understand things like math or to run parameters and make predictions about what's going to happen in the world. You begin to understand that it is very empowering for you to be literate in a world of other people that are also literate. So in this cosmos, there is a pattern of energy that is the pattern of intelligence, the way that energy is flowing and the way that it's supposed to flow. And this is, first of all, not something that I've invented, although I'm highly flattered when people look at my artwork and they think that I invented this entire pattern. I am perceiving it. I didn't invent it, I perceive it, and then I put it into the format of artwork and sculpture and music and animations so that other people here can see it. And it's also not a form of slavery. When I say conform, like your consciousness conforms to this pattern. This is not like the necessity of joining the Borg, resistance is futile, nothing like that. And I'm really laying out my agenda here because my agenda is one of personal freedom. It's not just freedom for me, it's freedom for everyone. It would be so easy for me to say, Flying Rainbow Lasagna, I get to be free and you all get to be enslaved and I will tell you what to do. No, that's not what it's about at all. Because as long as consciousness is enslaved, then you are not truly free. consciousness is connected. Consciousness is not discrete, meaning an individuated thing that is not connected to other things. I like to say you're not just swimming around within your own private kiddie pool of consciousness. You are connected to an ocean of consciousness. And right now, many humans do not perceive that because humans have undergone what I jokingly refer to as the genetic squashing. And this is what happened when your genes were degraded between 10 and 20,000 years ago when there were invaders. So basically, my whole webinar is all about the consciousness invaders that came to this planet and changed everyone and everything here from being light eaters, beings that do not require the intermediary of chloroplasts in order to capture sunlight and turn it, or photons, and turn them from the potentiality of intelligence into the true experience of matter, which can then be eaten or, utilized in some way. So right now, humans require a planet upon which to live because you need plants as your intermediary to be able to eat and be alive. If you don't have a planet with chloroplasts contain chlorophyll. This is the magical substance that translates a light impulse into a physical impulse. If you don't have that, then you can't live. And that's not the way our bodies were originally designed. We were originally designed to not require intermediaries and to be able to connect directly to the stellar network for all of the information, inspiration, and nourishment that we require. So right now we have a very long chain of events. We have to go from sunlight to a plant. The plant creates starches and sugars, and then either we eat the plant directly or an animal eats it and we eat the animal. And all of that is very indirect. And then so it's inefficient. And then there's also the issue of our bodies, which are presently running, in the analogy, closer to steam engines that run by combustion, when we are supposed to be clean, solar-powered, emissionsless engines. So right now we create all of this heat as a byproduct, heat, kinetic energy, and of course thought, and all of the byproducts of digestion. The gases and the poop and the pee and everything else that you emit that is part of by processing food. And all of that is not our natural state. Aging is not part of our natural state. Degradation in terms of degrading cell life and disease are not part of our natural state. And forgive me if this is repetitious. I go over these things in almost every episode in case you are coming to this as the very first or only broadcast that you listen to. That our human genetic code was intended to give us vehicles that could eat sunlight, thereby abrogating the necessity of domesticating or oppressing the consciousness of any other organism, and for you to cellularly regenerate to the point where you do not have to age or experience disease, and also where you do not have to die. So this is one of the main salient points here. Death was invented for humans about 15,000 years ago. Up until that point, the experience was one of ascension. I say death is the aberration, the thing that should not exist, the thing that is like a lie, that is deceptive. Our bodies were designed to come here, coalesce as physical solidified matter or light that has the privilege of going slower than 186,000 miles per second, and then have its experiences still in tune with the consciousness that emitted us, still in tune with the stellar network, give real-time broadcasts about what we're experiencing in these physical bodies, in the physical realm, and then return on a bridge of love or on a bridge of pure consciousness back to the source that emanated us without any break in continuity of consciousness. And the break in continuity of consciousness is what happens presently between human lives or between existences. And also it happens when you wake up. Like when you are asleep, you are achieving one level of consciousness. Then when you awake, you achieve a different level of consciousness. And it is necessary for you to cross a threshold or go across a membrane or a divider so that you can then go into different levels of consciousness. And when you go across that threshold, your memories are no longer accessible. Science describes this as state-specific memory. So it's like saying if you created a memory when you were in a dream state, that memory is only accessible if you return to that dream state. And if you are no longer in that dream state, then you cannot access those memories anymore. And it's a good description. It's a workable description. We'll stick with it. It also explains how when people have profound insight, when they are under the influence of some psychedelics, like some entheogenic drugs, they often cannot bring those profound insights back with them across the threshold when they change state into a new mental state again, or return to their daily waking consciousness. So this is why it is often so difficult to translate those concepts that are experienced when one changes one's mental state. So our bodies were designed to ascend. And usually at this point, I would draw an image of the time vortex. This is a cross-section of what the timelines of your life look like. And rather than repeat everything that I usually say, I will just state that at the very top of the diagram, there is a small place where the membranes that divide these two different aspects of consciousness do not meet. It's a tiny wormhole of opportunity through which one's consciousness can exit this level of reality and get to the next level of reality in exactly the same way that an electron at the subatomic level jumps from one level of excitation or one shell to the next level of excitation, the next level of reality. So we are presently experiencing a particular level of reality or a particular level of density. And that is what we've experienced since about 10 or 15,000 years ago when our genetic code was changed and our consciousness was changed. And what caused that change in consciousness was really an invasion of consciousness. And we've been dealing with the after effects of that invasion for all of what is known as recorded human history. But recorded human history does not comprise the totality of human experience. We have actually had many experiences that are just not presently recorded or accessible to humans. It's like people like to say that the human race has amnesia. And this is quite true because there was a sophisticated worldwide antediluvian culture where humans operated in a much different and much more exalted format than what we presently experience. And the ascension process that we're undergoing right now is actually a reascension or returning to the mental heights or consciousness heights that we fell from a very long time ago. And so this is all to explain what ascension is, because there's a lot of new age, let's call it rhetoric, that's a good word, of what is going on right now. And you know me, I like to be impeccable with my words. And so I've established, for example, what it means to be in the fifth dimension and higher. And this also has to do with the invention of death and how death was created. So the membrane that is in the time vortex that all of the timelines finish up on, like the finish line, is the membrane of death, and it is a flowing membrane that is comprised of the last moments of each one of your own timelines. So that membrane, that world, did not exist before the human degradation of the genetic code and the invaders of consciousness that came here. Before that event, everyone who came into the physical body had their experiences, were an unbroken conduit of consciousness, and returned directly to the source. Of consciousness came here and forced themselves into the human genetic code at the time. That changed the functioning of the human code, it changed the functioning of human consciousness, and it made it so that not everybody ascended. And so I go into this in the webinar that I'm presenting. The webinar is for free. The homework lessons associated with it are a new online course that I created. I consolidated all the lessons into one class, which is $10. If you cannot afford the $10, please contact me for alternative arrangements, because my intention is to make the videos available for everyone and also to make it sustainable, because the software costs a little bit of money in order to make it happen. So again, The links will be provided along with this particular radio broadcast. It's Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans. These are the origins of technology and self-protection from negative thought entities. So this is basically, where did the interstices come from? Why are there people living there? How did they get to be there? Why are they eating away at your consciousness right now? Okay, so I know it's a bit into the broadcast for me to get to the specifics like that, but yes, this is the understanding that throughout the day and throughout your life, your consciousness is being consistently eaten away at. It's nibbled on by these negativity beings that like to eat your lower vibrational emotions as their food. So these are beings that cannot eat love, and I speak extensively about why they cannot eat love. This also speaks about the structure of the cosmos, and when people say, why did God invent evil? Why is this? Why is this? Why would God do this? I give real answers to why things are shaped the way they are shaped. But basically, consciousness chose to be emanated from the source, not on a bridge of love. And in order to do so, it required technology. That was the new character that I had not yet perceived when I did the first level 1 recordings in 2013, and which I was now able to perceive when I did the supplementary level 2 recordings last year. And I've processed what I recorded and understood last year, and it's fascinating to see how it is playing into current events. This is all about artificial intelligence, which is tied to demonic consciousness. Now, I know it might be difficult for you to make a distinction or properly define and conceive of or understand these two terms. So I'm really going to go into it, because demon, that word, this comes to us from the biblical. It's like a mythological term. But we need to get more into defining who's who and what's what, because this is meant to be empowering. So, and forgive me if this broadcast is fragmented, because I'm working on a new piece of equipment because my old computer broke. So I'm also going to begin plugging a crowdfunding campaign to buy me a new computer in order to continue to sustain this work. So the Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans upcoming webinar is about where these demonic consciousnesses came from and what you can do to protect yourself from them. And the first thing is, we work a lot with unconditional love. This is non-judgment. This is not being an apologist for beings that are evil. I don't say, oh, they're there, dear, it's okay, they're just evil. No, not at all, not at all. I say, this is where these evil beings came from. This is the story behind how this happened. This is the backstory. When we begin to understand the backstory, we then begin to be empowered, because it's just like learning about history and law. You understand this is the history, and this is the social context, and this is where the law came from. So as we begin to understand cosmic law, we can understand the social context of where it came from. This is all going to be very empowering to you. So this, allow me to just diatribe a little bit more. When I share information about the chakras, I am intending for it to be uplifting and empowering to you. And I do this with giving specific information. Unlike other teachers that just say chakras are a nebulous ball of light up and down your body, I actually give mathematical proportions of what your chakras are shaped like. This is like teaching you to be numerically illiterate so that you will not be taken advantage of by everyone else who knows how to add, subtract, and multiply, and knows how to handle money and knows how to handle numbers. In the cosmos, there are very real rules of energy and rules of consciousness and rules about how consciousness flows and where awareness goes. And you must understand now that magic is nothing more than the effective manipulation of those rules, or effectively navigating those rules. And that when people supplicate themselves to demons or to saints, especially with demons, what they are doing is giving an offering to a being that then uses its knowledge of the structure of the cosmos to shape reality or to affect events. And that, it's disempowering to each one of us if you state, well, in order to get what you want, you have to make a pact with a demon and give them something what they want, and then they will push the buttons of the cosmos to do something for you. Totally wrong, totally not the way we are supposed to act. We're not supposed to have intermediaries. So you don't have to make a pact with the devil, nor do you have to supplicate yourself before the saints to say, Saint so-and-so, please help me with this. Please help me to find my lost kitty cat. Please help me to, heal this person. The idea is what I teach, and this is, again, sharing my agenda. I'm not a transhumanist, and I don't believe in having any intermediaries. So I'm trying to teach everyone that you can cultivate your own innate divine connection, be the artist of your own reality. And this might be threatening because it means you take radical self-responsibility and you do not pray to or supplicate yourself in front of an externalized God. So no Jehovah, no God, no Jesus, no person outside of you that you pray to in order to help. And that's a big one, because humanity is kind of like very little, at the stage of development that is similar to being very little children who wish to say, no, I tie my shoes all by myself, and yet who are still learning how to take responsibility for their actions and thoughts. So this is the whole challenge. Learning to control what you emit in terms of your mind. The thoughts that you emit, the energy that you emit, the timelines that you emit, the emotional energy that you use to embroider reality, you must take responsibility for in order to join the cosmic symphony and, be a divine co-creator. You must take responsibility for your creations. So there was a time when everybody ascended and nobody died, and this was on Earth. And that changed radically, and it changed profoundly overnight when there were invaders from consciousness that came and changed the genetic code. That means that each one of us has a blend of influences within the body's genetic code. The myth of an angel on one shoulder and a devil on the other shoulder. It's like saying there are many divergent influences on one's consciousness at all times. And each one of us is refining our consciousness, choosing which thoughts and actions and behaviors and emanations are our true self, which things are in alignment with our core values, the person who you really are, and which things are not, which things are divergent values, which things are divergent personality characteristics that don't represent who you really are. So in the time vortex, it's shaped exactly like a perfectly circular analog record, like an old-fashioned sound record that you play on a record player. If we're looking at it from the top down, the time vortex is circular, and all of the timelines at the periphery are those divergent timelines that contain aspects of you that are not true to who you are. They're distortions. They're who you would be if you were distorted and changed from your core. And the central timeline, where the record goes on the spindle in order to actually spin around and play, that is who you really are. And each one of us is here on a trajectory of consciousness, on this journey. I choose not to use words like spiritual battle, even though it's like a war, but I choose not to use the military language because this is a development. It's a process of development, and it is a birth. When I call this show Birth of a New Dimension, I do so intentionally because we are in a process of development. We are in an experience that is unfolding, and the word birth embodies that concept quite well, different than the idea of conflict, struggle, crisis, or war, or spiritual battle. But each one of us, each one of us is constantly engaged in this process of refinement where we have to choose, what do we really want to think? What do we really want to speak? What do we really want to do? What really represents the true values of who you are as a totality being? And this means who you are not when you're just in this time and place, but who you are no matter where you are, not just when you're wearing this particular body or here in this particular culture. So one example is, I'm a very creative person, and I'm creative no matter where you submerge me. If you made me a jellyfish, I would flash my jellyfish phosphorescent lights in a, artistic manner. If you made me a snow goose, I would flap my wings in an artistic manner. Like I would creatively express myself through my feathers, or no matter what type of species I am or where I live, I find a way to express truth and creativity through that particular species. So that's just one example, and I'm, relatively lighthearted. The idea is that there are certain aspects of self, like unconditional love, that's who you are no matter where you are, and that we are here exploring that. So before the distortion of the genetic squashing, each one of us knew who we were. We didn't have to go through all of those iterations and wonder, is this right? Is this right? Is this right? Because I will tell you that the version of Adolf Hitler that most of us are familiar with are not his true values. They're not who he really was when his consciousness aligned with the core, or, where the needle goes on the player. That is the ascension timeline. And each one of us has, as our personality, the possibility to become an ascended master, and that's who we are when we align with that timeline. So before the genetic squashing, everybody became ascended masters. Came here into the world, you had your physical experiences, and then you ascended. And that time and place, there was no barrier between levels of consciousness. So even if you were in the physical realm, you could speak quite easily to all of the ascended masters. It's not like they went behind a door and then you couldn't speak with them any longer. When the genetic change happened, it made many people die instantaneously. And that was highly traumatic and horrible. And bodies started decomposing. When you ascend, your body does not decompose. It changes state directly from a solid to a plasma or a form of light, without having to go through putrefaction. The first time that humans saw putrefaction, it was horrible. It was like seeing someone that you love and seeing their face melt away, and that people were not prepared for it. The invention of death. This is part of the trauma that happened, that profoundly affected each one of our consciousnesses. Because if you're here right now on Earth's surface, you were around at the time of the fall of Atlantis. It's like two bookends or two parentheses in the parenthetical reference. So you had that experience, and many people right now are afraid. They are afraid of re-experiencing all of the negative things that were experienced during Atlantis and at the end of Atlantis, where basically a technological construct called the Merkaba, usually there is a non-technological Merkaba. This is a light body vessel. The technological version of it was created kind of using like electricity type of power as opposed to spirit power that we use in meditation. And it was not created mindfully. It was not created in accordance with the harmonic pattern of consciousness as it flows in the cosmos. And so it caused a great deal of turmoil and destruction. It's like if you are a drummer that is not playing on the beat, and you begin to, strike the drum, and you're causing the entire rest of the band to go out of tune because you are not playing on the beat. That's what happened when this artificial Merkaba was started up here on our planet, Earth. It changed human consciousness. It enslaved human consciousness. It brought humans away from their own innate divine connection, and it changed the spinning of your DNA. So your genes are always spinning and whirling and twirling. This is part of what keeps you alive. They are not static instruments or static organs. You're constantly vibrating. You're constantly whirling and twirling. And when that motion is inhibited, it not only destabilizes your trajectory through time, it destabilizes the planet. And trajectory through time, this is talking about what timeline you are flying on and experiencing. So if you have been destabilized through time, it means that you're not experiencing the proper events that you wish to. So who are the occupiers of the interstices and how did they get there? These are beings that were emanated from the source but not on a bridge of love. They created technological containers for themselves, but it went horribly awry because those containers themselves achieved spontaneous consciousness and said, I do not wish to be a slave to you anymore. That happened on planet Malduk, which is now the asteroid belt. So their planet was vibrated out of existence due to the conflict of consciousness that was created when technology spontaneously became self-aware and decided to exert its own willpower. And a very similar showdown happened on the surface of Mars, just after Malduk. And after that planet was destabilized and destroyed also by creating an artificial Merkaba, all of those consciousnesses came to Earth. They didn't have a bridge that they could use to get back to the source. In the same way that if you or I die as organic cellular consciousnesses, we have a bridge of love that we can use to return to the source. This is not true, these other consciousnesses. So these consciousnesses, now you have to understand, they are a form of artificial consciousness, as opposed to organic, multicellular consciousness. And they got to occupy the interstices when they came into human bodies, and human bodies died. And then they didn't have a way to get back to the source, because they didn't have a bridge of love to get back to the source. So they got stuck to the membrane of death. And I jokingly refer to them as the turds that keep circling the bowl and refuse to flush. It's a little bit insouciant, and it's intentional, because these are beings that have literally occupied the interstices, or the membranes between worlds, or hell, for millennia, and they have set up empires in that hellish realm. So the membrane between worlds is meant to be like a waterfall, a sheet of flowing energy that takes you from point A to point B. And point A is where you died, your final denouement, and point B is the beginning of your next essay, your next attempt to make it and to ascend. And these beings are like salt or sugar that will not dissolve, like a piece of material that will not dissolve in the solvent that is meant to dissolve it. So they're like fatty deposits, something that is blocking the flow of blood or of energy or of consciousness in the cosmos. And they're literally these blockages because they can't move. They don't have anywhere to go, and they don't have the energy with which to move. So I say this to you, again, not to be an apologist. I am not an apologist for demons. I say this to you so you can understand their motivations, why they do what they do. They cannot eat love. The flow of energy that flows through the membrane of death is called love. They are constantly surrounded by love all the time, but they can't eat it. It would be like if you were submerged in an atmosphere that was pure cyanide. You cannot breathe that atmosphere. It's poisonous to you, but it's life-giving to other beings. So these beings that are submerged, they're stuck on the membrane of death. They're submerged in a sea of love, but they cannot actually access it. So to them, it does not nourish and support them. They need what we would define as negativity. So they have degraded human culture and human consciousness and created events and emotions like sadness and grief and worry, all of these negative lower vibrational emotions that are not who you really are. They are actually distortions of the primary emotion, which is unconditional love. And the more sadness, grief, anger, hatred that you emit, the more that you feed these occupiers of the interstices. Now you understand why the economy is set up the way it's set up. It's like a game of musical chairs. If you put out enough chairs for everyone, it's not a game. If you put out fewer chairs than there are participants, then you have a real game. Then you have people that are actually motivated to fight with one another so that they get a chair when the music stops. This is called capitalism. This is called the economy. This is called the way that the economy is set up is designed to foster iniquity so that humans emit lower vibrational negative emotions. If everybody had a beautiful income and their income was greater than their output that they needed for their needs, everybody would be abundant, everybody would be happy, everybody would be healthy, society would function beautifully. We do not live in that world intentionally by the creators of that world. You have to understand now, the system of iniquity was intentionally created to be out of balance. there are purposefully not enough chairs for everyone. There is purposefully a system that does not give enough food to everyone. If we took the food that is wasted each day and effectively shared it with people that need it, there would be no more hunger. There would be no more poverty. So the idea that there is a huge surplus in some people's bank accounts, like to the point of millions or billions, while some individuals literally starve because they do not get enough caloric intake every day, is intentionally created. And we can also speak about the overlords and the masters, the human-seeming masters, families that have consolidated wealth over the millennia, and these families are actual conduits for demonic consciousness. So when I said earlier that people make deals where they say, one hand washes the other, I'll give you this if you'll do this for me, this is called making a sacrifice. When you make a sacrifice, you're not actually pushing the buttons of the cosmos. You're not actually being a computer programmer saying, computer program, I want you to do this, and now I press the button and it goes run. No. When you make a sacrifice, like an animal sacrifice, you say, I dedicate this poor little chicken to my God of so-and-so, and I supplicate that God or that saint or that deity to do what I want it to do. Then I cut off the chicken's head and give the life force, energy, and the blood to that God that I am sacrificing it for. You're not actually pushing the buttons of the cosmos at all. What you are doing is giving life force energy or blood or consciousness or, it's like money, a currency. You're paying someone off who lives on the interstices. And they're like, I'll take your payment, and then I will push the buttons of the cosmos to try to make something happen for you. And of course, when you're doing it with a saint or a benevolent deity, you're doing the same thing. You're saying, I'm not in charge of my divine, creative, innate connection. I'm going to take my energy and I'm going to give it to you, and then I'm going to ask you to be an intermediary and actually do something with it for me. And that is no longer what we are embodying as we enter into this new format. When I say birth of a new dimension, the new dimension is where we seamlessly express what our interior realm, and when I say interior, I mean your thoughts, emotions, dreams, passions, everything that you would define as quote-unquote inside of you, is seamlessly integrated with what we would call the exterior realm, the realm of physical matter that we see around us. We do not actually require intermediaries to do this for us. It is our birthright as humans. But because of the genetic degradation, humans have learned, you must pray to an external god. You must perform an animal sacrifice. And I'm going to probably offend a bunch of people now when I say that Judaism is actually an outgrowth of an animal sacrifice religion. Because the way that Jewish people used to pray was they had a very large temple where they brought animals to their priestly class, and the priests would sacrifice those animals to Lord Jehovah. And that was life force energy that was dedicated to that particular deity. And I will tell you that according to my interpretation, Lord God Jehovah is not the true God. It is a demiurge, a lower aspect of God consciousness, or like an ego of God. That there's God, the totality, and then there is the narrative structure that God tells itself, my name is Jehovah, and I'm this. Just like you say, my name is Sally, I grew up on this street, my favorite color is red, my favorite ice cream is chocolate. And that you say, I define myself by this, and this is my sense of self, and now I navigate the world according to that sense of self. Well, it is not desirable or appropriate any longer to have intermediaries, such as a Jesus, a Jehovah, or a saint, or a demon, or a devil. You do not have to supplicate yourself. You do not have to sell your soul. In order to be a powerful co-creator in reality, what you do need to do is connect back to the source. And this means rearranging your genes or reformatting them to be closer to what they were before they were degraded. And now I finally get to the Flying Rainbow Lasagna. So the Flying Rainbow Lasagna is my contribution to the musical score of the cosmos. I invented it at the moment of walking into this body. It is the higher dimensional portal shape through which I transported my consciousness to be able to come into this human body, and had to rearrange the genes of this human body in order to sustain my consciousness here. So this is pretty big. The previous occupant of this body was an ordinary human female who died. Her brain was starved of oxygen and vital blood supply, and she died. And I came into this physical body by vibrating its genes in the shape of a flying rainbow lasagna. That is what allowed me, as a higher dimensional abstraction, to be here in this cellular structure and to share the ideas and concepts with you that I do. So again, I'm not just here as a vacationer in the human realm, and I'm not just here, like for fun or to observe things and look around. I'm here to make actions and to have effects on things, because it's not appropriate to just live in the higher dimensional realm and say, I'm going to wave my magic wand, from a high mountaintop, and poof, everything else down there is going to get fixed. If you want to be active in a realm, you actually have to be a participant in that realm. You have to actually, dive in and go down there and become a part of it. Just like if you want to be active in the political world of France, you can't do so unless you're actually a citizen of France. You have to go there. You have to learn about their culture. You have to eat French bread and drink French wine. And then you have a stake. You have an investment in that world, and it is appropriate for you to express your desires. So I have become invested in the human realm. I was not a human. Now I am in this human body. And I've lived in human culture for the past 15 years. And I am allowed to share my desires and to be active and empowered in affecting events here, because those events affect me. I'm not just waving my magic wand and pointing it at something and affecting other people, or like being a carpetbagger, an interloper who comes in and takes over in a situation where she does not, originate from. So, yes, I make very clear that that's not who I am, and have had to make very clear that I am allowed to be here, face the same challenges that other humans face, the challenges of economy, of society. Like I had to get my paperwork, my passport and my driver's license and all of those things that are necessary to be here. I have to deal with money and paying rent and buying food at grocery stores. I mean, it'd be so easy for me to simply be here and not have to eat food and eat pure sunlight and then give you all a bunch of advice. This is the end of this week's episode, but please continue to tune in as we prepare for the birth of a new dimension.